All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. As I've already indicated, Shira is not available today, so Elke and Eve and I will be hosting. And this is an open forum for you to ask us anything about your job search process, what's working, what's not working. We also have a lot of emphasis on networking because that really is the number one way to find a job in today's environment. So, with that, who's got a question? Maybe another way to start this off is for each of you just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what field, what type of work you're looking for, um, and we'll go from there. So, Steve, why don't you start, and I'll go around the room.
Sure. Stephen Dunn. I've worked in both association, not-for-profit, as well as corporate environments over the last 30 years, focusing on IT functions, mostly manager, director level positions, operational and service delivery focus, as well as fractional CIO, VCIO work for managed service providers, so IT support functions. Um, I'm predominantly looking within those realms. I haven't limited myself to a specific company search because a lot of what I've done has been, again, germane across pretty much any environment or company. There's a need for that. And I'm obviously taking the focus that resume being modular, it's being tailored, it's doing all the related pieces that you need to for both clearing ATS, but also just really resonating on outcomes more than necessarily functions now. So that's me.
Yeah. Well, and outcomes are, the most important part of the resume. In other words, your name, your address, the company, the title, all of that stuff has got to be on the resume. But uh, what people look for is certainly the outcomes when they're deciding who to interview, and that's the where you need to get to if you're going to get a job. So, um, Victor, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Victor Tao, and I'm looking for a pen testing role. So that's in short, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Victor,
Okay.
say it again. What type of role? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Pen testing role.
Lab testing.
No, pen testing, ethical hacking.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right. Um, Aaron, you want to go next?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here. My name is Erin Anastasi. My background is in public health and international development. I've been focusing on women's and children's health, and my job was abolished with the UN Refugee Agency. They laid off about 40% of the staff so far worldwide, and that was about a year and a half ago. And I'm searching for roles such as senior program officer, program manager, policy specialist, something along those lines. Would love to stay in the field of maternal and child health, whether it's domestic or global. I'm also interested in domestic violence, emergency response, poverty relief, and those kind of issues. And if possible, I'd like to stay in the nonprofit sector, like a nonprofit organization, foundation. I would consider government and research institutions as well. Ideally in the DMV area, but also open to New York and other options. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Monica, you want to go next?
Sure. Well, I'm Monica Jerby. I'm a marketing and communications professional whose work helps vulnerable people in crisis and complex situations and builds trust, drives action, and secures funding. I've supported national and international marketing and communications campaigns and over 2 billion in funded proposals. Similar to Aaron, I am coming out of the U.S. Agency for International Development, where, our work basically supports vulnerable people in crisis and complex situations. And so what I would like to do is apply that background somewhere to similar populations in the United States, such as combat veterans and their families or other people, homeless, what have you. That's what I'm trying to do. And so I live in the DMC, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I would, on the Maryland side, so I would like an opportunity that is a reasonable commute from Greenbelt, Maryland, or something hybrid, or something virtual. And so that's me. I'm Monica Jerby.
Okay, thanks, Monica. And Lance?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, nice. Before my mic had gone out, so I was doing a little adjustment there. Hey everyone, I'm Lance Hester. I've been to a few of these meetings as well, so I'm not exactly sort of new, but not new. My background is in electrical engineering, but I'm a data scientist, and pretty much what that means is I just expose things that are normally invisible and make them visible to you, and hopefully make them valuable to you in a sense of both either profitable or at least alerting you to what may be going wrong. Most recently, I worked at a company doing web performance, and I'm looking to still carry on doing data science in the future. I've had backgrounds in cybersecurity, so I understand what Victor was talking about with pen testing. But I've also worked with the Internet of Things, so think of like Wi-Fi, and if you have anything like a Zigbee controller or anything like that. So I've worked with different kinds of data and just really enjoy working in that space, and so I look forward to continuing there.
Okay, thanks, Lance.
Mhm.
Well, as you listen to everybody, one of the things we promote on this call certainly is, if what you heard from someone else, you might have a contact, you might have an idea, you might have some information to pass along to them. Certainly reach out to, anyone that's on the call, and we encourage you to put your contact information in the chat so that you can get in touch with one another. And now, what questions do you have? Where's the problem or the struggle you're having? If there's no questions, then I'll ask you, or Eve or Elke will ask you some questions.
Yeah, I was thinking in my head, if nobody had any questions, I'm curious, for those of you, has anybody actually had an interview in the last month? I guess show of hands if you've had an interview in the last month. Okay. Or 2 months.
Yeah, it's been interesting because in some cases, I think a lot of what we're seeing is either non-communication or we have an interview and it's a ghosting situation. And in some cases, even whether it's, positive or, hey, we regret to inform you kind of thing, you're getting follow-up. That's obviously not happening to everybody across every submission. So the last two that I did was a networking referral. So somebody I'd worked with roughly 20 some years ago that I kept in contact with via LinkedIn. Her firm had an open position. I contacted her first. She was more than willing to walk my information over to whoever the hiring manager was, which is great. And I said to her, look, if you've got a process for submission, all of that, let's not jump the shark. Let's go through that. Had a screen, and then it went radio silent for about 2.5 weeks. And then all of a sudden I got a follow up Wednesday. Yeah, something like that. So, it does play out that way. The other was an on-person or a third round in-person interview that was a couple of weeks ago. And then the hiring manager basically said, we're hoping to close out by this date. Didn't hear from them until a week and a half after, which was a regret to inform you thing. So it's balancing those kind of scenarios out is what I'm finding most often. And I'm targeting. I'm not, there's people that will send hundreds of applications in and hope for numbers and things like that. And I can tell you that maybe even a couple of years ago, some of that may have had more success than not. That's not the case that I'm finding, and maybe others are as well, is that with automatic submissions, other types of that kind of blending process, there's so much noise that whether it's an ATS or a human or a whatever it is, that really networking, yes, but also tailoring whatever it is you're sending in. And what I've done is avoided any direct, like one click LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever kind of submissions and gone right to the company or association site. That's really the only way I've even gotten any traction with it. So I don't know what others are doing.
Yeah, that's something that I know Shira talks about a lot when she's here is especially nowadays, we're in a whole different world now. We're in a whole different landscape. Is going directly to the company site, which sometimes can be a longer application, but I always tell people try a lot of different methods. A lot of
Mhm.
people do the one click because it's right there on LinkedIn, but you're also getting a million people who are applying. Not everybody's applying through the website, and sometimes I can say this as a recruiter. Sometimes uh, applying directly through the site sometimes will alert different to the recruiters or whoever's on the inside. So
Right.
that is good advice. And also, I asked that question to prompt a little bit of dialogue because you already did it yourself, Steve. For those of you who have gotten interviews, I'm just curious how they've been in the last 60 days, and if there's anything that stood out to you that you were like, you know what, I didn't like that part of the process, or here's one thing that I fixed on my next interview, and this happened or that happened. So for those others of you who raised your hand that you've had an interview in the last 60 days, what's something that you didn't like or liked about that whole process, and does it prompt any questions that could be good dialogue today?
Aaron, you got your hand
Yeah,
up?
thanks for the question, Alki. I did have an interview probably a little over a month ago, and um, I made it to, well, I don't know if it was the first or the second phase, but I had a initial phone call with the HR person, and I felt like it went well, although it's happened to me now several times that in the email they'll say like, "Oh, this is just a meet and greet, like get to know you a little bit, tell you more about the role," and it turns out to be like a full-fledged competency ba or behavioral interview. So that's a lesson learned for me. Like no matter what they say, like I have to prepare as if it's the real deal. That's one thing. I felt like considering that I hadn't fully prepared for that, I felt like I did reasonably well. And then the next phase was a test, a technical test, and this is, health, public health related role, management, associate director role. And I felt like I was a really good fit. And I was able to get two different referrals, one for an internal employee and one someone external, but who knew a lot of people internally. And that technical test, I don't know if that's what eliminated me, because I did write to the company a couple different times and they said, sorry, we don't give any feedback on interviews. So I tried. But yeah, the technical test, as I was doing it, there were three components. One was like Excel and doing some data analysis. And I was like, oh, wow, if this is who they want, or if this is what the job is, that's not me. So I went ahead and submitted it knowing that, I probably didn't do very well. Um, and I don't know if I could have prepared better for that because I didn't see that really. I mean, there was something about data in the job description, but I guess I didn't feel like it was going to be heavy emphasis on data. And then I do have another question more generally about the job search, but maybe I'll hold off until other folks talk about their interviews.
Okay. Victor, you had your hand up?
Sure. I had like a phone screen, but video calls. But I'm gonna have another one next week. So we'll see what happens. But usually it's just a technical screen, phone screen, and then I had one. I've been looking 2 weeks because it's been like 2 or 3 weeks. since I left my other job, but so I will have another one next week. Usually this is technical questions, but like a video conference, like phone screens, not phone screen, video screens. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. No luck, as of right now.
Congrats on an interview, especially within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had I had a typo on my resume. Like my email was spelled wrong. That's why I didn't get any calls. I just realized that I fixed it like yesterday. Somebody told me, and then I'm getting calls now.
Yeah.
That's a
Cross
good
the
catch.
cross the T's and dot the I's. Yeah.
That's a good catch and a reminder to tie into what someone else was talking about earlier, um, about being prepared and your resume. So real quick, I mean, you do all the proofreading and all of that, whatever, but also be prepared. Yeah, you walk into a screen and it turns into something else. Now, if your time is limited, which you should probably always pad in some extra time just in case, because they may get you in front of them and tell you that, hey, we had other candidates, but everybody, out, we had to change last minute. If this goes well today, we will hire you. So we have, do you have extra time? Because we want to ask you all the questions we have. So yes, always, be prepared for interviews to go in all directions unless you have a time constraint. And then you can find a way to work that. But crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and also being prepared to speak to everything that's on your resume. That was a good catch because yeah, who knows what you were missing, and maybe somebody has an offer for you and they can't get in touch with you. So double check those little things.
Yeah, thanks.
Monica?
Well, I've had kind of luck recently with I guess informal interviews. I applied for two jobs with two nonprofits, and one I had three informational interviews with two staff, and they referred me to the recruiter. Um, but then the job that I applied for apparently just was put on hold, and I last heard from the recruiter that another opportunity might be opening up in the next week or two. So, I mean, I feel good about that organization. They've had a few people from the USAID space go there, and so it feels like a good cultural fit. And like when people are willing to do informational interviews with you, for me, that makes me more want to work for that company than if you get ghosted by people and they're not interested in talking to you. There was a second nonprofit that I spoke to where I had two informational interviews. I talked to a board member and another person. I went out to lunch. I haven't heard back. The person I went out to lunch with said that they might, wait a month or two. So I'm still within that. I need to probably follow up. But they have another opportunity that I could apply for. But I feel good about people who are, like I said, open to talking to you. And then I had a third long interview. I'm participating in South Lake Focus Group of Texas and the Dallas Pit Crew, and they do an interview where they have three panelists. Or actually, in my case, it was two, who, interview for a real job. Um, I did not get the interview for the real job, but the things that were useful out of that interview, since it was in Texas, is that I realized that I mean, they were nice and not anti-USAID, but they really didn't understand what USAID did. And so, like, for example, I was talking about that I did a lot of proposal work, and somebody knew somebody who had submitted an unsolicited proposal to USAID a few times and got rejected, which is that's not how it works, And so what I learned from that is that you need to be very clear with people who, you know, just don't know what USA does. But another thing from that is that somebody who saw my interview referred me for another job, and so I've just applied for that job 2 days ago, and then various people know people at that company. So who knows? I mean, that, I will work for remotely for a firm in Texas, but I'm open, and so I feel like I'm making progress. It's slower, but it's there was so much disinformation about USAID on top of the fact that, people weren't familiar with what USAID did. And so that was an incredible insight that, nice people who are not antagonistic toward USAID were not informed about what USAID did.
Yeah. Well, the good news is it seems like a lot of activity there. And if you've had other people that know you that have been hired, certainly that's a good resource to stay in touch with them in terms of, what are they experiencing? What might they be able to share with you that might help you in an interview in some way? So I, stay in touch with those people. Eve, got a comment, question?
Yeah, I went to a networking event last night and everybody was sharing stories. But going to what Alki was mentioning earlier, one of the individuals said that she had applied for a job and she received a call out of the blue. She picked it up, of course, but it was an AI generated screening. And she wasn't necessarily prepared for that call, and she said it was the most disheartening experience because it's no longer a human, it's this computer, and it's coming out of the blue, and she just feels that the whole process at this point has just really lost something. So I don't know, that I just wanted to share that with folks in case you get that type of call.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Was that you said that the interview itself was out of the blue, or learning that it was AI was
All of the
surprise?
above.
Well,
All of the above. Yeah, getting the call just randomly and then having
And then
to
she
do
was
the
talking
screening.
to a bot. Um, so on the one hand, be ready, everybody, be ready. But on the other hand, we're all humans, we're all adults here as well. Similar to, if somebody scheduled you for 20 minutes and they said, yeah, we only gonna need 20 minutes. And then they're like, hey, we need to go an extra 50 minutes. Well, if you planned on 20 and you really have something to do, it's as you all probably have done before with meetings or coworkers, it's very much okay to say, hey, I scheduled this for 20 minutes. Is there a way that we can book this another time to speak? Same thing with, with AI. You could, if that happens, you could go through with it, or you can, just go, no, not for me, or follow up with someone in a company just to inquire to say, hey, that kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that. And that's if you get a live person who responds to that. But it's very much okay to ask questions, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. A lot of times they don't answer, but ping or track down emails, contact information of somebody like that's a good one for the human resources department right there, because depending on the size of the company or the organization, they probably have an HR team of some sort who is responsible for hiring practices. But yeah, it's okay too to just be like, yeah, I'm out of here because I wasn't ready for this. This is totally throwing me off. If you're good to go ahead and go with it. But there's a lot happening nowadays, in our space, in our recruiting space, in our hiring space. If you've been on the job market for months, a year, or even 2 weeks, and you hadn't really been on the market in a while, you're finding out every week that things are changing and processes are changing. There's actually some organizations that are looking to move closer back home to more of a human approach, because they're realizing the gaps and the problems that are still being worked out. So remain human. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to move on.
Yeah, AI is everywhere today, and while it has tremendous value and power in many different ways, there's ways. I mean, to go through the recruiting process with AI, I mean, you're going to be working with human beings. And the one thing AI can't do is, show emotion, laugh, cry, whatever, and that's what human beings do. So it's an interesting world in which we're living in. Lance, you have a
Yeah.
comment?
If, well, this is kind of going in the direction. I didn't have an interview, but I did attend a few networking events, particularly more in like the data science kind of machine learning space. And one of the takeaways that I took from one of the meetings, or well, not a takeaway, but experiences, um, were that people were finding that oftentimes uh, the the company, the job postings are essentially the kitchen sink worth of everything. They want you to have X number of years of experience, uh, all of all these different kind of qualifications. And so at this one particular networking event, one of the I guess a person who was sort of in the hiring process, maybe they were working for the company and had revealed that oftentimes they're giving these long litany of things that they're looking for, but oftentimes they're not even sure what they really want in terms of uh, they the person even was very candid and said something to the effect of, well, we maybe they hire all of say type A, but we were going to give type B a try, and then we found out during the process we really like type A, still, and type B wasn't really what we were looking for. Is that pretty common? I don't know if that's something that folks have experienced here, where you kind of get the, well, we were trying something new, but we really like the old, like new Coke and old Coke or something.
Yeah. And you get caught up in the middle of it because
Yeah, yeah, and you're not even sure why you.
yeah, you at least in the beginning this looked like a real opportunity, and then you find out, well,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
the person who had shared it had said they had gone through I guess, and at least in the tech field, oftentimes there, as in probably other areas, you go through several gated interviews, and they had made it all the way through the last gate, and the hiring manager had told them, well, we were experimenting, and
yeah.
no, we really decided after 10 interviewees or whatever that we're just looking for the same old same.
Yeah.
I'll let Vern opine first before I jump all over this one.
Well, again, any networking event you go to, you may learn things like you just did,
Yeah,
Lance.
yeah, yeah. It was pretty.
That's helpful. Um, but most importantly, in every networking event, your role is to meet people and tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do, and most importantly, maybe some of the accomplishments or things that you're proud of, which demonstrate your ability to really, make a difference. Um, and then try to learn something about them. Who they are, what they're looking for. Maybe somebody that you could connect them that would help them. Which again, these are kind of just fundamental things when you're networking. You're trying to build relationships, not with every single person you're ever going to meet. But obviously, sometimes you go to a networking event and you do connect with a person and you stay in touch with them, and then the two of you, might help each other in some way going forward. So that's my 2 cents there. Elke, I'll let you go, and Steve, you got your hand up, and you'll be next.
And just so that I'm clear, and that's great networking points, Vern. Just so that I'm clear too, Lance, you said that basically the job description was one thing, but that's not what they were looking for, right? It wasn't true.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I guess because they had so much in there, I mean, based on what the person had shared and what they had, it was incredible. It's like you're I know I had attended the Mastermind, I guess 2 weeks ago, and you were saying, when you read through, you kind of have to do a little detective work when you read these job descriptions. And I thought, wow, okay, I'm a little bit prepared for what this guy was sharing. And then I was like, I don't know how you combat that. It's like, um,
Yeah.
you know, they've
I
had so many different things in there.
Yeah.
I let me start with the networking thing first before I dive into the job description stuff. This, again, we're preaching to the choir here, especially for any of you all who've been on this call, or if you've done any networking at all. At the end of the day, there is a job description posted, but if you're in the industry, you can look at job descriptions that are around your scope and you can know, like, wait a minute, they're asking for this but they want that. That's not what I've seen in my career and in my field. Like, you a lot of things you can detect on your own if it's in your space, that you're an expert in. You can look at some job descriptions and like, wait a minute, this looks a little fishy. In an interview, I'll ask more questions, or maybe I'll ask more questions before my interview, which kind of allows me to touch on the networking for a second. This is all the more reason why getting a live person, which isn't easy, as Steve, talked about earlier. It's not easy to get a live person, but if you can get a live person or network with somebody on the inside or anybody close at all, those are the questions that you ask. Like, wait a minute, this house, the for sale sign says $16. It's not $16, right? You can ask somebody, they can fill you in on the details. Oh, that's a mistake. They did that so they can get more applicants, but really it's 16.5 million, for the square footage, yada yada yada. So networking allows you to kind of get some inside information. You may learn something about the opportunity that tells you you don't want it, because they're like, listen, you don't want this job because that person just left, and they're actually downgrading the grade of the position. They're also downgrading the salary. That's why the last person just left. So getting as much information as you can, instead of applying cold, is best, because you can get helpful intel. And again, that's why I always talk about asking questions, as many questions as you can, especially when they tell you, when they say, hey, do you have any questions? Or, thanks for your time today. Here's my card. Here's my information. If you have any questions, let me know. Flood them with all the questions you have, because that's your way of learning as much as you can about the opportunity. Going back really quickly to job descriptions, there's just not enough time to talk about this one, because sometimes it's a relic job description from the 1800s that they have on file that they have to use. There's one that is HR or the department has to use, and it has to be written a certain way. It's written in a language, like, old Aramaic or something like that you can barely translate common terms for. To your point, Lance, a lot of times they're trying something tricky or switchy or cute with a job description, and it doesn't quite speak to everything that you want to know. So it's funny, because on this call we tell you, mirror your resume and customize it line by line to what the job description is asking. That can be tricky if it's a messy job description, or if it's not a job description built on true integrity of what the role is. So I still say customize it. But if you start looking at a resume that looks fishy, and it's like, a lot of cliches, a high performer, multitasker, must be able to juggle blindfolded, and all these different types of things, that gives you a sense of kind of, that the description might just be written to fill the page. So you really need to dig in. Sure, it talks about it a lot on the top 1, 2, 3 main bullets, for a 5 that you can pull out of a job description to get to the meat. Last thing I'll say is, if you get a live human, or if you get response back, and again, if you have any questions about the description, you can get in the interview, and that's when I would say, hey, yeah, I saw this, it asked for 10 years or the equivalent degree or whatever. How how much weight are you putting on the degree versus how much weight are you putting on experience, yada yada yada. So if you get a live person, that's your chance. If you can hook one on your fishing rod, that's the chance to pepper them with the questions, as many questions as possible.
Yeah, just one other thing before Steve, you jump on. And I'm just going to repeat what Elke said, and Shira says this all the time, and I agree with her. I mean, look at the first 3 to 5 bullet points. Having been in HR and created job descriptions, and think about it. If somebody's creating a job description, the first things that come to their mind are probably the first 3 or 4 bullet points. This is what we need in the job description. So kind of focus on those as you go forward in evaluating whether the job's right for you. If it really matches your skills and talent, then it's an opportunity you really probably want to follow up on. Steve?
Yeah, well, a few things, and really just trailing off of what Lance was talking about originally, the recent activity that I've had called two things out that I think are important to kind of look at. The first was on the on-site interview. Well, I always prepare for every conversation I'm going to have, and I try to think of it more as a conversation, but
Yeah.
to remember to answer the question, right? Whatever it is they asked, you answer that question as part of your response and hopefully do it in a way that's engaging and pulls them in. But less than 24 hours before the on-site interview, the HR individual involved, the recruiter, sends me a list of what their questions are going to be and what their and who's asking them, right? Which was along the same lines as the second interview I had with them, is that it was very clear they had a panel, it was technical staff and some of the leadership, and they had a list of questions, and they were going through that list in its entirety. So that gets challenging if you're not prepared to try and guide it into a conversational realm. But it's clear they were trying to take for lack of the wrong term, a data-driven approach to we're going to ask every question of every candidate in the same way and evaluate our responses from there. It makes it challenging in some respects to have that kind of a conversational interview and really kind of go through things. But I made sure to gauge both the responses that I was giving around what they asked, but also gear it towards, hey, let's leave a little bit hanging here and lead it as a question into something I wanted to know, hopefully driving it that way. And it worked okay. The other one was the referral I got from a former colleague of mine. I heard back right away to set up a time with the initial talent acquisition person. I got detail, and it was conversational. It was very stylistically good. It flowed into some of the key points I saw in the job description, which told me, at least initially, it looked like they had some alignment. I asked all the things I would normally be asking, and I also asked about economic positioning, right? Because if you go into market, you're making an expense of some kind from whether you're backfilling or you're putting in a new position, whatever it is. And I wanted to get a sense from general staff, are they thinking they're economically viable? What's kind of the process involved? And this is from somebody that's only been there 3 months. So it's really just it's fishing, but it's not fishing. I really just want to get their sense of what the impression is. And all of that was fine. Then I was supposed to hear from her on very specific days. She said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be your contact. It was like, okay, this is dialed in. None of that happened. I go to the with everyone, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, to do a very summarized, very quick thank you note. Hey, thanks for your time. I took this out of it. If I have a question, I put that in there. I did that. Didn't hear from her for a week. And then I was told, hey, I gave all the information to the hiring manager. I should hear back shortly. Another week and a half goes by. And it wasn't until my contact came back and asked, hey, how's it going? Anything you've heard? Can I help in any way? And I had to tell her, here's what I've experienced. And I told her, I don't see there's any point in jumping into this because I think it creates a stickier situation. But within 36 hours, I then got called in for a scheduled interview this coming Monday. So my point is, when I confirmed my interview, I went back directly and I said, let me just make sure from an alignment standpoint, that everybody in leadership is clear on expectations that you're after and things like this. And I did that because while I was waiting for this recruiter TA person, I saw the posting shortly after I got contacted be closed for accepting new applications. And then at the time I was supposed to hear back, it got reopened for more applications. And what that tells me is either you are looking for a broader depth of candidates from your job description that you're not seeing in your initial interviews and want to open the field up, or there's an alignment gap between what this group in hiring is doing or looking for and what leadership is telling them are looking for, or something's amiss there. And I just very professionally but casually asked, hey, given what goes into a hire and its critical nature for your firm, I want to have the best possible conversation about how I could potentially help you. And so I took the time to do that, and I did get a response, and I didn't expect full transparency. I got, well, apologies for that. We were doing some candidate review, and then started to getting around to this. So it was in a way that I knew what I was hearing, but at the same time, they at least acknowledged it, which was fine, at least for me. And I'll absolutely second, and this is the last bit, and my apologies for kind of hogging, what Alki was talking about relative to the personalization and things like that. My model from a tool standpoint is I'll use AI pieces in the same way that I run a resume that's tailored against like an ATS kind of score just to get a sense of where it is. But one of the things I've been doing is using the ChatGPT modules to go through and say, give me this job description, take my current resume, suggest any edits or changes, and look at tone and structure along my style of writing based on outcomes. And then I'll go through line by line and say, look, can I actually say this because I did it, or is this stretching it too far? Meaning, I'm going to use the tools for what's there, but it's absolutely my approach has been a trust but verify thing. I can't have it sounding like it's a completely AI generated resume because people can spot those. So that's what my experience has been.
Yeah. I would certainly second what Steve just said about AI. We're human beings, and so this whole recruiting process is other than when it's AI interviews and that type of thing. This whole interviewing process is you're meeting people and you're talking to people, and you're human beings, and you've got to be able to, what AI can't do is, show emotion, show judgment, ask a follow-up question, off the top of their, somebody. Sometimes when I've been interviewing people, in the interview, I'll come up with a question that I hadn't thought about because of the dialogue that I'm having with the person. So you've got to be able to be flexible and be prepared for almost anything in any interview you go to. And AI just, that's not what AI does. It's a powerful tool, but you got to use it in the right way.
You want to add to that,
Thanks,
Eve,
everyone.
before I say anything? Did you have anything, Eve? No.
No.
Okay. One thing, I won't take too much time with the follow-up series that Steve gave. That was good, and there was a lot of things you can do with that as well as far as following up. It's good when it's I'm a headhunter, and Shira is as well. So we do a lot of touch with our clients, our employer clients, and our candidates. It's back and forth, back and forth. Every detail's covered. We try, here's who you're going to be meeting with for this interview. It should take about 30 minutes. He'll probably ask you these types of questions, and then she'll probably ask you these types of questions. It's my preferred process. Is why I do it. But it's working with somebody that is vested in the process, vested in you, vested in getting the right person in the right role, and everybody being communicated with, and all of that. So that's one whole thing by itself. When you can get it. If not, it's part of the world we're living in. But every time you can get it. The other thing I was going to say is, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. And if you've been a manager before, or even if you've been in hiring processes before, like you find out like, oh, the reason, I haven't heard, the results of my background check is because the person who does it she had a fall over the weekend, and she's been out for 3 or 4 days, and so we didn't even know that this was pending. So let us go and look in there, and whatever that happens. A lot of things happen behind the scenes. That whole thing, because I hear this a lot. The whole thing, not to say that what Steve is saying didn't happen or was wrong, but there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. Job postings, I hear this a lot. So that, hey, I saw the posting was down. So some people say, I saw they took the posting down, but then they put it back up while I was in the interview process. So that must mean I didn't get the role. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's posted in a million places, and sometimes it's set on one job board to go down in 30 days, and you have to hit a button. I've done this as a recruiter. Got to renew the posting, so sometimes it'll go down, and then I got to repost it. Sometimes it'll go down for other reasons. Sometimes they actually do take it down because it might have been you during your interview and after that made them go back and think, like, you know what? In order to hire someone like her, like she's the second candidate who's come in at that compensation, who has the skills we want, maybe we need to raise the compensation, but they got to get approval for that from HR and do all these other things behind the scenes. So a lot of times they'll pull it down, make a couple of tweaks, and then put the job description back up. So there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. And so though it sometimes can be, discouraging throughout the whole process, don't shoot yourself in the foot before you have to. Sometimes there's a lot of things going on that you don't know about, and that's why it's good to have a good POC throughout the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say absolutely. I mean, I've worked with associations where part of their infrastructure was recruiting. Like they had an entire division that worked with companies to do talent acquisition and recruiting services and things like that. So it's very clear to me, having worked with those people for many, many years, that any number of flaky things can happen in the process that are not candidate visible, that throw a wrench into their plans, that can cause challenges in kind of keeping up with timing or process or whatever those things are. And I keep that in the back of my mind, right? Because I have had that exposure. I'm like, I can get there to the hiring manager flakes on review or from a timing aspect, or there's a misalignment or what. So especially in this case, I'm glad you brought this out. I didn't assign anything more to it than, oh, I happen to notice this. And the only reason why I called it out was because when this job was posted, and it was on LinkedIn is where I found it, and it was on, I think, their corporate website. I saw it the day it went up. It wasn't there before. And what I do is I set alerts to kind of go off at 24-hour intervals to say anything new since this, or give me these parameters, whatever it is. So I saw it go up and I said, wow, that looks interesting. Oh, look, I have a first level contact there. I'm going to talk to her first because I want to get a sense of culture and fit and what they're after and all these kind of things. I did that. I put the response in maybe 2 or 3 days later. They had already had, I'm going to pick a number, like 80 some, whether that's an actual submission or a click or what, I'm not going there. But they had a response. And then I saw it closed. I said, I saw them go through and I said, okay, they closed it. So it wasn't like it was at the end of that 30-day for this one, but you're right. Sometimes there's those automated windows where, if they don't follow up with it, it auto renews and then it goes back out there, it gets reposted. And for me, I don't assign any more weight to that than anything else other than observationally, which is why, to your point, I asked the questions when I finally heard back this week. I said, hey guys, I'm gonna you'll forgive me for any impertinence, but I want to make sure everybody internally is aligned because I saw this happen and I want to make sure it's a great conversation for all of us. And I gotta they acknowledged it, and so some don't even do that. So that was hopeful. But yeah, I appreciate you calling that out.
Speaking of internal, I when I worked corporate as a corporate recruiter, not too many, but there were several times where I found out from the department, hey, Alki, XYZ person who's in the department is going to apply, and they get first looks or first priority as an internal with certain roles, depending on the situation. it's still equal opportunity and fairness. But I've reopened a thing. If they didn't have an internal job board, I've reopened a posting just so that an internal person could apply. I've done that also for externals, just to open it up for 3 more days or 5 more days. But there's so many things that happen behind the scenes. That's why I'm writing a book about it. But anyways, yeah, it's good to have good communications with your POC.
Okay. One more point on this, and then Aaron, I'll jump to you. So behind the scenes, one of the most frustrating things for me as an HR manager for a lot of years in the recruiting space is a manager would come to me and say, so and so's leaving. We've got to fill this position. We got to get it filled immediately. We do the recruiting. We get the resumes. We go through the resumes. I go back to the Elke, who's the hiring manager. Says, Elke, here's the resumes. Tell me which of these 3 or 4 you want to bring in for an interview. Elke said, yeah, this is really critical. I got to get this done. 2 days go by, 3 days go by, a week goes by. Elke, where are the, you said this is critical. Hurry up. Oh, I've got other things. The CEO called. He wants me to do this. So all of those things can happen behind the scenes, which just slows down and makes the whole recruiting process take longer than it should. But again, we're all human beings, and things do happen behind the scenes that you just don't know about. So, Aaron, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, picking up on what Stephen was saying about applying within the first 24 hours. So I've heard, yeah, you shouldn't wait more than 24 hours. Then I've heard like, oh, no, 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 you can't wait 24 hours. That's too late. And I'm wondering, like, is there a statute of limitations, for lack of a better term? Because I try hard to keep up, but even to keep up with just like the number of job alerts I get every day and the other stuff, I kind of feel like the job search is like a game of whack-a-mole, if you all know that. Like, okay, last week I really focused on my resume. Now I'm behind on applications, and then I'm focusing on my LinkedIn, and now I'm behind on my, like, and I'm spending a lot of time networking, but then I'm not doing applications. So I guess 2 questions. Like, I'm trying to figure out how best to prioritize my time. I know networking is so important. I'm focusing on that, but I feel like maybe I'm not doing enough applications. And I know also part of that is my confidence, because I'll look at a job description and it's almost like I'm looking for a reason to talk myself out of it. I think because of all the, somebody told me the other day, like, don't say rejection, but all the no's, I'll just say that I've gotten. Um, so I guess, yeah, prioritizing my time. And then one of my jobs, I have like 2 job search buddies I meet with every week. And one of them was kind of politely kicking my butt yesterday. Like, Erin, I sent you this thing on Tuesday and it's Thursday and you haven't applied. So like, if it's been, I don't know, 2 days or 3 days or something, is like, at what point do I say, okay, it's too late. I shouldn't bother submitting the applications, even though the goal is, you know, 24 hours or 12 hours or whatever. Thanks for your guidance on that.
Um,
Well, I mean, one of the first things that comes to my mind is, if you're looking at lots of different jobs, um, use your intuition, use your experience. Which of the jobs do I think my skills and experiences would fit the best, and certainly be applying to those. Again, in the job search process, you could have 15 jobs in front of you, all of which you think you might be able to apply for, but really prioritize the ones that you really feel you match up best with. Alki or Eve, other thoughts about that?
um, for overall best use of your time, a lot of that will center around what your goals and objectives are. I won't touch that one as far as specifics because that could depend on a lot of different things. I will echo some of what Vern said, which is, as far as efficiency is concerned, um, and even that varies because a lot of it depends on your field, the location, and things of that nature. And this is for everybody on the call. Your field, your industry has a lot to do with availability in the market, supply and demand, and all of that. I know your arena versus a couple of the more, technical folks that we have on the call today. Their skills are more specialized. their skill sets are more specialized, so they're rare a lot of times in their space. Whereas what you do, it might be demand supply might be a little higher than demand. So, I'll say first, be as efficient as possible, depending on what your daily and weekly goals are. Obviously, spending some time trying to make live connections is always key. We preach that a lot on this call. The other thing that you said, though, that I wanted to speak about, that I hope I didn't lose this whole time setting it up is, oh yeah, as far as applying is concerned, first day, first hour, 2 hours. So on this call, and I'm probably more than anybody on this call, I'm more the guy of like, listen, don't even waste your time with applying online. That's almost what I say, but not fully, because you should. You should use every tool in the box. So apply online, do what you need to do. There's a lot of other ways to do your job search. But um, I think we say on this call, if you're going to apply online, there are certain things you should keep in mind. And so if you're going to apply online, it would be great if you could be as early as possible, within the first hour, the first 2 hours that a job is posted, again, depending on your field and the location and all of that, because it's just like a major concert, and a lot of headliners are coming to town. The earlier you get your tickets, the earlier you can get in, the better seat you're going to get. And so that's kind of the situation with a lot of opportunities, is if it's posted in the first hour, if you can, do it within the first 24, the first 12, the first 4 hours, good. But at the same time, I've been on recruitments where I've had 96 candidates and it's been open for 6 months, and somebody comes late to the party and they're the one who gets the opportunity. So it's hard to say, but best practice is, yeah, nowadays, if you can be first in line, it usually lends itself to your favor, but it's not the end of the world either. The last thing I'll say, that should have been the first thing that I said, was everybody on the call, be kind to yourself. It's crazy out here. It's frustrating. It can be exhausting. You're not going to get everything right. So be kind to yourself. Do what you can do, and you wake up the next day and get back to it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I've said this on the call before. The job search process is the most challenging project you will ever be faced with. And the reason being is, if you worked in an organization and I'm your boss and I say, Aaron, we need you to do X, Y, Z, and we need it to, be done in the next 3 months. Here's the budget. I could come to you any day and say, Aaron, how are we doing? How close are we to meeting the launch date? And you could give me an update, because the goal is clear. We're going to implement this new program on this date. And so you can say, we're on track. We're going to have to delay it by a week, but we'll get it done at that point. I mean, the goal in the job search, get a job. The goal is really pretty clear. You can't tell me right now, Aaron, whether you're one day away from your next job or 6 months. And so that is just because we operate so much that we're in control of, what we can do and what we can say and when we do things. And the job search process, you're putting all this effort and time in, most of which ends up as a dead end. So that's frustrating. And then on top of it, you just don't know when this whole unbelievably difficult process is going to end. So it's
That's
just
so true.
yeah, it's not it's like I said, it's the most challenging project you'll ever try to manage. So
Yeah, it's true. And I appreciate the advice to be kind to ourselves and be
yes,
patient and
yes,
give
yeah,
ourselves grace.
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, another reason we talk about networking, for lots of different reasons, primarily for potential job leads, but networking can also, if you've got some people close to you, they can provide some encouragement, just make you feel better about, who you are and being kind to yourself. So, right, we're just about up against our usual closing time. Any last questions? Any last thoughts? All right. Well, if not, we will see you all again in 2 weeks. Good luck. Continue the hard work. Eve, Elke, any final comments?
No, I mean, it's easy to say hang in there, but I love Alki's words. Be kind. I mean, if you're getting out and meeting others, they're in the same position. We're not alone in this. And somehow we're going to get through it, but we've got to rely on each other and have faith.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yep.
the encouragement from you all. Solidarity. Thanks.
All right. Have a good
Thank
couple
you.
of weeks, and we'll see you in a
Enjoy
couple
your
of weeks.
weekend.
Hang in there, everyone.
Take care.